The NBA is changing the format of its All-Star game yet again, but no need to wait until February to know the result. It's going to lead to disappointment and unhappiness. We know this because it's just going to create the same half-assery that's plagued the NBA All-Star game for years now. There is a solution, however, and it just happens to involve one of my favorite sports leagues going today, the NRL, or National Rugby League. At least I think that's what it stands for. I've never actually said what the initials are out loud. None of this is important. What is important, what does matter here, is that Australia's Rugby League just may hold the key to fixing the NBA All-Star game, maybe even interest in pro basketball as a whole. Degeneration X may have had 2 words, but for Adam Silver, I got 3 words for ya: state of origin. Before I go into the details, first a big shout out to Wolfpack Rugby Recruitment over on Instagram, who actually first sent me the idea and some of their thoughts on it way back in August. They're always sending me good ideas and I'm always super slow to respond to their messages if I respond at all. So yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I do see you. Anyway, if you're unfamiliar with the State of Origin series, here's a brief rundown of what is known as Australian sports' greatest rivalry. Since 1980, I know that's debated, just move past it, I don't want to get into that, but since the early 1980s, the states of Queensland and New South Wales have fielded sides composed of players from or connected to the representative states. I know that's not right. You know, you don't have to tell me that's not right. I don't really want to get sidetracked on that discussion because we're talking about how to fix the NBA All-Star game today. So, long story short, you have teams composed of players representing Queensland and New South Wales that are more or less like all-star teams. The best rugby league has to offer in Australia. The stakes are huge, the competition is fierce. Well, I guess apart from that time they played a State of Origin game in Long Beach.
And out they come here at Veterans Stadium, Long Beach, California.
Technically, that is classified as an exhibition, not part of the proper State of Origin. It was kind of a wild game nonetheless. A punch was thrown like a minute into the game. Then you had a halftime interview on Australian TV with Americans that made sure no Australian would ever really want to visit Southern California.
It's just like sort of the freeway life here, isn't it, really?
Yeah, except nobody shoots each other on the field.
Rugby league, just like American Road Rage, but without the shootings. You know, I really want to talk about this. I really want to get into it. I'll do it for another time. Back to the topic at hand. Why State of Origin can save the NBA All-Star game. If you're unfamiliar with the Aussie Showdown, it's a best-of-3 series, and these days each state gets a home game with 1 neutral site contest mixed in. Home games really keep players on it since the backlash for non-performance is very vocal. You hear about it locally from fans, from the media. You can't just turn up. Since New South Wales versus Queensland is a rivalry, being selected is an honor, but it's not simply an honor. You can't just turn up, wave to the crowd, do a few dunks, and then go sit on the bench. You actually have to turn up and play, because if you don't, someone just might punch you in the mouth. More importantly, this is where rugby league greats become legends. Ask Nathan Cleary on how it can shape a player's legacy. He's won multiple NRL grand finals, and yet everyone wants to talk about how he can't do it at the State of Origin level. At the end of the day, the games are almost always awesome, hard-fought contests. The crowds are massive, everyone is super into it, and it serves as a de facto all-star game. And because it's run by the NRL and not some international organization, although the NRL basically runs everything connected to International Rugby League, not important though, but because the NRL is involved, it runs it. It collects the profits, it fills the coffers of the league, owners are happy, everyone is satisfied because it's making money for the NRL. Even though you get injuries and whatnot, everyone understands the importance of State of Origin. So when Wolfpack Rugby Recruitment over on Instagram mentioned the idea of turning the NBA All-Star Game into a State of Origin series, it kind of got gears turning in my head. His idea was much different than what I'm going to propose, but what I thought of when I heard about the NBA and State of Origin, it got me thinking to James Naismith, Mr. Peach Basket himself, the inventor, the originator of basketball. You see, the thing about Naismith is that he was a Canadian who ventured down stateside and would create the game of basketball. It was a lot different than it is today, but James Naismith is known as the inventor of basketball. And you know, thinking about his story and his ties to Canada and the United States, thinking back to state of origin, and also factoring in what we saw from the four nations with hockey, everything finally sort of just clicked for me. This is how you fix the NBA All-Star game. USA versus Canada, best of three. That's it. The thing about the All-Star game, really all All-Star games in 2025, is that they're inherently flawed. They were created for a different time when everyone didn't see every player all of the time. It was that once a year occasion where the best of the best gathered. We don't need that anymore. Patriotism, though, national pride, that is universal and timeless. Really. I know folks out there will say they want to see USA versus the world, and I kind of get it, but it ignores the fact the world isn't a singular place. No one grows up outside of America thinking like, man, wouldn't it be great if I played for this composite side of players representing a very geographically nebulous area? No, absolutely not. You grow up wanting to represent your country. This is kind of why the East-West format of the All-Star game has failed. It doesn't mean anything. It has to be one country. And since the NBA is a North American league, then it makes sense to make it USA versus Canada. Think about it. You take a 2-week break. You have the week for the NBA All-Star game and you have the week for the NBA Cup no one cares about, but you build in that 2 weeks and you schedule 3 games between United States and Canada. Best of 3, but you play all 3 games. Canada gets a home game, the United States gets a home game, the third game can be wherever, you can give it to the winner. Yeah, it doesn't really matter, that's not the important detail here. But the stakes are simple, they're playing for the James Naismith Shield, the ultimate symbol of North American basketball supremacy. There really is a case to be made that now is the ideal time to roll out such a series. Canada is getting better and better at basketball, and they are home to the current NBA MVP. Importantly though, they're still going to be very much an underdog in this series, and that is what made those early state of origins so special. Queensland was the upstart, the underdog. No one really fancied them at all. The big bad New South Wales, they had deeper rosters, they had more talented players. It was seen as a cakewalk for those New South Welshmen. Everyone dismissed Queensland, yet it was those Queenslanders who won the first 3 state of origin series, and the myth of Queensland being the underdog is one that carries on to this day. It just creates an extra level of intrigue and drama. Should America beat Canada in every best of 3 series they play ever? Probably. Would they? Absolutely not. That's not how sports works. I also think the Canadian players would be inclined to take this super seriously. They want respect. I'd like to believe the American players don't really want to lose to Canada. I would hope that they would see that as being a negative. Now, is that the case? I don't really know. Like I said, I hazard to guess they wouldn't want to lose face or lose street cred by losing to Canada, especially if the spotlight was beaming down on them in this 3-game series where it was the only basketball happening. Going back to the Four Nations tournament for a second, the impact that had on hockey shouldn't be overlooked. Even though the NHL wasn't playing a damn game during that time, the national conversation, the national sporting conversation focused almost exclusively on hockey for that period, which is a rarity. It brought so much more interest to the sport than playing 8 consecutive All-Star games ever would, or just having a bunch of regular season games, or creating a fake tournament of regular season games during your season. Having an international competition matters. Players are invested, fans are invested. It becomes part of the national discourse, at least in North America. And the NBA, by running it, well, they get what they want. TV ratings, revenue, money. It's a win-win. Think about it. If you market this and you build this correctly, you're going to be able to bring in huge crowds, 70, 80,000 plus crowds. Crucially though, you're taking that post-Super Bowl lull in the sporting calendar, that hangover we all feel once the Super Bowl ends, and you are owning it. You are just controlling the narrative of sports in the country by having an event of this magnitude, this size, of this scope. We know even when the NFL season ends and the Super Bowl wraps up, no one really cares about the NBA. A tinkering of the All-Star game format doesn't change that. Of course, there are some drawbacks here. Firstly, what do you do with all of these international players who are extremely good? You have a lot of good players who aren't Canadian or American, and there really isn't a lot you can do with them. For me, this is all about tapping into a pre-built, ready-made rivalry, USA versus Canada. We're in North America. That sells. It's so simple. We're already here. Don't make this more convoluted than it needs to be. And case in point, when it comes to state of origin, you know, players from New Zealand, they don't participate in it. Players from England aren't participating in it. It's just sort of one of those things where it's like, it's a bit of a bummer, but you don't really want to change what already works. As far as risks of injury, would players be concerned about getting hurt? I mean, would NBA players actually try something they haven't done in the All-Star game for years now? I don't know. I would really like to think they would put in an effort here. If for nothing else, then no one in the NBA wants to be remembered like the 2004 US men's Olympic team. That would hopefully outweigh the risk involved. It would get players to want to win. Does it work like that? I mean, who knows really. Ultimately though, the National Basketball Association has nothing to lose in at least trying this. First, we know the league's not afraid to try new things, so something like this wouldn't make them too uncomfortable. But secondly, this is something that a lot of stakeholders can get behind. Fans can get behind it because it's actual games that matter. Owners will get behind it because it could potentially bring in more money. Players, that's the question mark here. But again, I think if you showed them what you were trying to build here, you would get the Canadian and American players on board. Finally, the state of origin format for North American basketball just makes so much damn sense. You have James Naismith and his background, the Canadian who came to America and invented basketball. You have this Canada side that has some talent but is still looking for respect in North America when it comes to basketball. Maybe they're hungrier. Maybe they come together as a team and upset those Americans who think they're just going to walk into any gym around the world and win. Or maybe those Americans do what Americans do best.
Nobody shoots each other on the field.
No, not shoot people on a freeway. That is win basketball games. At the very least, you're creating a compelling sporting competition. As we see with State of Origin every year, as we saw with the Four Nations in hockey, it's just fascinating to watch. Look, I love Canada. Canada is a wonderful country. Canadians are amazing people, but when our country, when the United States faces off against Canada in any sort of sporting competition imaginable, I want to beat their asses. Hell, I'm in a fantasy football league with a few Canucks and it absolutely pains me to lose to them. Meanwhile, the NBA and basketball just need a shot in the arm. They need to do something that makes it feel big and important again, something that can bring in casual fans or lapsed fans, something that can get rid of this narrative that basketball sucks in 2025. An exhibition where teams are scoring 200 plus points, playground style picking of teams, mini teams. I mean, every last gimmick the NBA has rolled out does not work and will not change that narrative. So why not give us a basketball state of origin? It literally could not be any worse than the NBA All-Star game happening and then the next 3 days everyone talking about how the NBA All-Star game sucks.
The NBA All-Star weekend stinks.
Now, will we get a basketball state of origin? Who knows? Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to know about another American-Australian sporting mashup where you can learn about the time they combined American and Australian football, checking out the video in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.